Hi, we are back on stage with Anne and Fintan. Thanks for being with us today. So we're going to talk about go-to-market and how to leverage verticalization to become a must-have software. So maybe to kick off this discussion, Anne and Fintan, I'll let you introduce yourself and let the people know a little bit about your experience.
Super. Fintan, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure, I can start. Thanks, Anne. So I've been working with Rike for the last 5 years. I'm currently the GM and regional manager for Rike APAC. I started off in Rike Dublin, and this topic is quite interesting for me because I started off and I was one of the first people to join the office, and we grew from nothing to over 100 people in 4 years. I then came out here to Melbourne here in Australia almost 2 years ago to do the same and kind of emulate that growth. And we've gone from 3 to 20 people. A little bit about me: I've been in sales for 15 years as a whole. Then Rike itself. So Rike is 1,000 people. For those who don't know who Rike are, 1,000 people globally. We're a collaborative work management software, so a project management, collaborative work management software, founded in 2006 by our CEO, Andrew Filev, because he faced these challenges trying to manage global engineering teams. So everything was going through spreadsheets, going through emails, basically not suitable for digital work. And it's at that point where offerings like Rike kind of disrupted the market from your traditional project management software to this collaborative focus on not just planning but executing on work. So yeah, that's pretty much it from Rike. Looking forward to having this conversation with you today.
Super. And I'm Anne De Kerckhove. I'm the CEO of Freespie, and I've been in B2B and B2B SaaS for and scale-ups for about over 15 years now. So I've had quite a few different industry experiences. Freespie is a platform that helps brands augment their conversations with their consumers during the buying experience. And specifically what we do is we unify the whole online buying, online digital journey with what happens on a phone call and when the conversation starts and all of the follow-up for the call. So our job is to make things more seamless than they are today, ensuring you don't have the boring IVR repetition, making sure that you're actually directed to the right person because we've seen what you wanted to buy. And so avoiding all of that friction that is often taking place, particularly in complex purchases. And so tell me a bit about Rike and the whole horizontal versus vertical.
Yeah, sure. I think why this is interesting, and you're looking at the industry as a whole, like we're very much a horizontal SaaS offering, you know, where anyone who's online and who needs to manage work can use and leverage Rike. Okay, so I mean, we're a collaborative work management software. We're a really easy to use software, and we're designed to help people execute on their work. When I'm thinking about this conversation today, and we're looking at horizontal versus vertical, and I'd add another one into the mix as well, and I'd add in on top SaaS, so that kind of industry neutral Zapier Workato offering. But when I look at that, I mean, when we first kicked off and when the business was started back in 2006, it was started with in mind of it being a suitable platform for anyone who was trying to do work. What's happened and what we've kind of organically kind of moved towards is more of a vertical focus, and we've got a couple of tailored vertical solutions, such as Rike for Marketers and Rike for Professional Services, which focuses on media and advertising, and that's Rike for Marketers, and then Rike for Professional Services focuses on like anyone who's charging for their time, so legal services, financial services, tech services, that kind of thing, even some consultancy. So when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about Rike growing what was very much, you know, a wide kind of department function, you know, suitable to any kind of industry. We've now kind of targeted towards a specific audience. We're looking a little bit more in terms of a tailored solution, and that's kind of what's interesting about it.
Cool. So we've been through a similar journey at Freespie. When I joined 3 years ago, we were really selling to all sectors, even SMB and enterprise. We were really a mixed bag, and we experienced good growth, and it just seemed to make sense at the time because the platform could be used by everybody. But what we saw was it was quite hard on the teams because it meant they were pulled in many, many directions. And it also meant that we were losing some of the focus, and we could see that some of the SMB was starting to churn because we're a rather expensive platform for them. And so we really decided to say, okay, we've got to really focus the company. And so we decided to go all in terms of enterprise. And even then we said, that's not far enough. We really need the focus because we help companies with quite a complex process, and our platform's quite complex. So we decided then that we would just focus on a few verticals. And in fact, at first we said, great, we'll have 5 verticals and we're going to go for them. And we're a relatively small team, and we couldn't even do 5 verticals. And so we've even honed that further to really be deep in 3 verticals. And those are the ones kind of we really focus on. We do have customers in other verticals, but when we think of our offering, when we think of how we build, we really want to be almost in the organizations of our clients and really understand all their problems. And so we've really focused on real estate, on automotive, on the marketplaces of those, as well as the OEMs and the dealers, and then translate that into a deep, deep understanding of the client.
I think that's interesting, Anne, because as you mentioned, both businesses started off with a similar kind of concept. You start off with something that meets a critical need. You then realize by experience and through growth and scaling where you're actually most suitable, and then you kind of hone in on that aspect of the business. I get that.
And I think also one of my big learnings is if you say you're going to go for verticalization, you really got to go for it. Otherwise, it feels a little bit like vaporware to your clients very quickly. So I think if younger startups are thinking about that verticalization, it is hard to do at the beginning because you haven't quite learned where your big hairy problem is. But once you have, and if you think it's vertical, then you really have to take it seriously, don't you?
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, I've looked at that, and as I mentioned, we had a multi-layered approach to this vertical piece. We came out. It was 10 years before we came out with our first vertical offering, which was the Right for Marketers. So that targets media and advertising, it targets agencies, and it's very tailored to them. They're able to set up what they need in terms of their workflows. They're able to control the intake of work. They're able to report on that work, and most importantly, they're able to integrate with the relevant tools as well to make sure that they have everything set up in one space and allows them to execute on work. Another kind of component that it's, I suppose, to one extent, changes the vertical focus to us for a little bit is the new kind of remote working model that we now have. And when you see people working from home, we're part of that remote working model because we're part of the virtual office. If you have, you have your Slack, you have your Zoom, you have your Rike, if you're trying to execute on work at home. And that's where it kind of muddies it ever so slightly, because if you have people who are trying to work from home and have never used a collaborative work management tool before, we're also very suitable from that. And I see other avenues and other areas for growth coming from that too,
And how do you make sure that how does the company make sure they're not creating 10 different platforms as they verticalize? Have you guys faced that challenge?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think that what we've done, and it's very much a land and expand. So we're landing and expanding in very many different industries, but what we're seeing is the ones that we're expanding in most and the ones that we're landing the most, and the data is telling the story, are the ones that we're necessarily going after. Yeah. We have a multitude of different solutions available. So you've got like your basic professional for the smaller teams who are very basic needs, right up to your enterprise. So you're going after enterprise. We've an enterprise offering, and that's fine. And anyone in between who wants to use those solutions can use that. But if you want to get more focused, then we have the Right for Marketers, we have the Right for Professional Services, and that's where we're kind of growing in that more tailored solution offering. And that's based on the data, based on our growth, and based on where we see opportunities and trends.
Yeah. And how specifically did you choose your verticals? What were the driving factors? It was obviously where you were winning. Were there other factors that made you go, yeah, this is definitely a vertical worth going for?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, it's not one that I have the complete answer to, because I'm very much on the sales side of the business as opposed to making decisions in the verticals that we get into. But what I've seen, and both in Europe and as I've grown out the team here in APAC, is that it's not just the verticals we focused on. We're focusing on different geos as well, and then we're focusing on building a team around that. So when I look at the makeup of the clients, even if I look in APAC, most of our customers that are coming through have some resemblance of that kind of industry that we're targeting.
Cool. At FreeSpeed, for us, it was very much where are we must-have software? Where are we indispensable and we really resolve a big problem? So for us, it naturally went to complex purchases of fairly high value items, B2B or B2C, and so we really focused on that. We had to make sure, of course, that we had a total addressable market worth going for, that the verticals we chose were strong enough and big enough, and we had to make sure that those verticals were ready to embrace this kind of technology and really want to push the digitalization of their sales process, and had to be very data driven. So all of those factors made us look at specific verticals and say, and on top of it, in those we can see really strong land and expand. So we really did a data driven approach, and really focused on saying, over the last 8 years, where do we see the accounts that just explode with us and keep on asking us for more stuff? And then you know that you're going to have that really true deep partnership with them, rather than just a nice to have on the side. And I think that's really important for, again, earlier stage startups to really be data driven in that approach. Maybe not in the first 2 years, because you have to test and learn, try a bunch of stuff, but then you got to take the hard decisions and really use the data to drive that and look at where you're really growing into an account and really starting to kind of capture more of the value.
You mentioned something really interesting there, Anne. You had to make sure that and check, were they ready?
Yes.
When you're looking at your customers. How did you get to that? That's actually really interesting.
So it is really interesting. So we looked at what kind of softwares they had in place already. Did they have a data lake? Did they have a CRM? Did they have the right teams? And if they did, then we knew we were ready for it. If somebody doesn't have the right digital team or the cross team to do customer experience, then you know they're probably not going to be able to address this kind of platform, even if they wanted to. Companies that were also in the midst of really wanting to change their processes, right? That were really obsessed with fixing what was wrong in the customer experience. So it's actually interesting. The teams at FreeSpee, the sales teams and customer success teams have like super detailed qualification process and account plans to focus on, even within the industry, which are the people that are most ripe for our technology. And that's just really important, because if you go for a very verticalized approach, every one of your sales meetings has to be a success, right? Because if you're in the automotive sector, for example, there's not 400,000 different OEMs, right? So you want to make every single call count. You want to make every approach count, because you want to capture as much of that TAM as possible, right?
Sure.
Which puts
we also don't want to leave
guys.
Yeah, fair. That's good.
Should we talk a bit about the benefits of verticalization? Maybe also the risks with them. For me, I mean, one of the big things is obviously the benefit is that ability to really get to know your customer and cross-sell and upsell to them really well, because you become a long-term partner. You're also not spending marketing willy-nilly, because you actually know exactly who you want to target, so your cost of acquisitions can be lower. And you can form really deep partnerships with the rest of the ecosystem that matters to that vertical, and therefore, again, increase your reach and your breadth of services. But there's also obviously some risks. Are there other big benefits that you've found?
Yeah, I mean, not something that directly applies to us, but you know, anytime you're reading about verticalization, you're always going to come across this concept of winner takes all. So like, if you look at Salesforce in the CRM space, okay, so they've clearly been the leader in that space for many, many years, but they have 19, 20% of that space.
Yeah.
If you go specific into a vertical, you would hope early on to even start getting more, or certainly have the opportunity within the short to medium term to capitalize on more of that market share, depending on how specific you go into your vertical, you know. Some of the things from the sales side, then if I look at that, I'm like, sorry, considering some of the sales side stuff, your win rate should be better, you know, because you should be solving a critical need, speaking in the buyer's language and understanding exactly what their true issues are, which I think is quite good. You touched on the cross-selling and upselling. That's been a huge thing for Reich. You know, we've very much been a land and expand model since conception. And when we're landing in and then upselling and cross-selling, that's been a really, really important thing for us, even in terms of like the basic plans up to enterprise, and then cross-selling or upselling up to the kind of vertical solutions that we have. I think retention and churn might be an interesting point for you to expand on as well. But what I see is that the more suitable you are and the more value you create, particularly in the first kind of 90 days or in the first couple of months, the more likely they are to stay with you. And then from the last kind of sales piece for me is that it's a better customer experience. It's better to speak with a subject matter expert, and it's better for customer success, from my kind of understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the teams feel much more confident when they are experts. And so for customer success, it's been a real pleasure for them to be able to have that focus, because they know they have also other reference clients in the same vertical. They skip steps, of baby steps for the client, because they're like, look, we know this is the perfect setup for you. Here are the things we're going to solve, and they can prove that value really quickly. It also helps us really have strong ROI for our clients. And of course, that just means you won't churn, indeed, because you're actually making them money, which is important in our case.
Sure is.
But it's also quite hard for some of the sales and CS teams, because inevitably we'll come across other opportunities and we kind of go, or for our engineers, they're like, our software could be perfect for this. I mean, really, it could be amazing. And then saying to a sales guy, well, actually, no, I really want you to stick to the list we gave them, the targeted accounts, and when they see kind of really nice opportunities elsewhere. So what I found is it's so hard to be disciplined and to stick to it, because inevitably, especially as a startup or a scale up, you just want to grab more things, right? And you want to be super ambitious, focus on tons of things. But particularly I found with COVID, focusing the team and really honing on a specific set of problems is really important. And it's been the same thing with our clients. So with COVID, we've gotten, I think, even closer to our clients and having many more discussions with them. And so what was slightly frustrating, I think, for some of our commercial teams now is actually feeling really, really good.
I'm just thinking about your point a minute ago about telling a salesperson they can't make a sale. That's going to be a difficult pill to swallow,
Yeah, I'm not always popular. But then, if you bring them back to the data and they see that, their next 3 years of commissions are guaranteed through having the right focus and on growth accounts that will just continue to kind of go. We have some that have gone up from 800 times what the original land was. So, that's actually really cool. And you develop really deep personal relationships then with the clients, because you're in a journey with them.
For sure. And I kind of joke or jest to an extent. I get that. And I mean, we've had some experiences ourselves. We're pretty flexible and robust tools. So we've had people come to us and go, I can use this as a CRM, or I could use it as a ticketing system. And like, you want to be able to do business with them, but you also want to guide them the right way and go, look, yes, could you adjust it and could you set it up to be a ticketing system to some degree? Yeah, you could, but are you going to get the most from it? No, you're not. You're better off using a dedicated ticketing system. So yeah, completely get your point up.
Yeah, so you're right. It's not just the vertical, but it's also within your product breadth, saying, actually, this is what we're really good at, and this is what you should use us for, and not stretch beyond too much, because then you're going to provide a kind of second-rate service on those parts of the platform. Now, you had to think about geographies really carefully. Do you want to tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose it was more important to me when I came out here to APAC, because I was building the team from scratch. We had a customer base. We had a relatively decent customer base. We had some remote workers, so we had a team of 3. But APAC is so vast, and I mean, if everything is important, nothing's important. So we did a macro analysis. We looked at the main geos that we thought we would focus and target on first initially, and we kind of broke it into 5 or 6, and we went after them, because we don't want to, especially with a small team, and you touched on it earlier on, with a very small team, you don't want to be trying to target every market, because you'll end up targeting no one, because you want to get a little bit focused, and we did that. I mean, we covered a couple of different languages. I looked at some of the emerging markets that I thought were of interest. We got language cover in the office for them. Rike is available in 9 different languages. We translated into Chinese, into Korean, languages like that we thought were really, really helpful based on the TAM of those countries. And that was one of the first things that we did. And that was very regional focused, because, we're a US based company. They didn't do it in the US. They did it in EMEA a couple of years previous, and then we did it when we came over here.
I think for us, we're a very, very global play. We have clients that have deploy us in kind of 22 countries, and it's easier because we don't have the language except on speech analytics, which is really hard to do in multiple languages. So on that one, we've had to choose certain geographies where we offer speech analytics, because to do it well, you have to really, really focus. So for us, in fact, because we're so verticalized, it allows us to be geographically really spread, because we'll build plans with our clients that said, okay, we'll roll you out throughout 22 countries. And that would not be possible if we were both horizontal and geographically spread. Whereas with the verticalization, it's easier because we have the same central stakeholders, and we just deploy almost like a machine, one country after the other, and learning best practice from one to the other. And so those are the typical kind of choices that you make if you're quite, if geographies matter a lot, then it's harder to be both horizontal and geographies, because as you said, you end up being an expert in nothing, right?
Yeah, for sure, which is not what you want.
Yeah. Was there any other specific things about when you think about the product and your client strategy? Do you have those conversations about what you hear from the clients and how that should influence your product teams? Because as sales guys, you're very front of line in understanding the customer needs. So how do you get that knowledge back into the organization?
Yeah, really good question, actually. And I think that's where our focus for the likes of the tailored solutions that we have probably came from. So we have a community, and when I look back at some of the changes, and this is on a global level, I'm not speaking about APAC, but on a global level, I look back at some of the changes in 2019, like we made 75 different adjustments. It was probably over, don't quote me on the numbers on that, the product team will kill me. But in terms of the changes, I think it was in the high 70s in terms of improvements, adjustments, and releases within that year, which is quite high. We have a development team of 400 people. That's the largest segment of our business, and allows us to keep the product where it is. But a lot of that's coming in from the sales team, it's coming in from the CS team, but a huge amount comes in from the community. And the community has a global reach because you've got people who are voting on things from different geos around the world. So that has been a huge thing for us. And I think that's led to the development of the product, because if you look at, and I touched on it at the beginning, if you look at where it came from, it was Andrew trying to manage a global engineering team. And now I'm telling you how we focus on media and advertising, and we won't focus on professional services in a large capacity. So absolutely, that's been really, really important to us. What about you, Anne?
Yeah, same. It's been really important to get the feedback. So we created something called the Innovators Club, where we have some of our longest-standing customers. We've precisely tried to create that community. It's a smaller one than yours because obviously it's a smaller group of decision makers, but we meet with them every month. And actually, surprisingly, COVID's made it so much easier in one way, because we used to think, we had to physically all get together in a room, and our clients were in tons of geographies. And the minute we switched to saying, okay, we're just doing this online like we're doing now, hugely beneficial, because we could just do them in a much more frequent basis. We really created a really strong community among our clients that didn't know each other, and they now chat and have their own conversations without us. And of course, it could all be recorded, so our developers could actually live see our customers talk about their problems, and just like the chats and the questions here, interact with them on a much more comfortable basis. And so we've really gotten that feedback so much in such a richer format now with the Innovators Club. And of course, the sales guys and the CS team are also a huge part of that data gathering, as well as our professional services team. And they just bring all of the information and have, it's so much about cross-team work in order to get the right things built by product, and to make sure it doesn't get lost in translation. It's funny, I mean, we've all experienced it, right? You start with what you think is a super clear product brief for a new feature, and then spaghetti happens and something comes out completely different. And I think if you continue to bring the client throughout the development process, you make sure that you're sticking to what that original product vision is. And I know our developers have loved it. They just absolutely love hearing how people use their software. They love hearing even the challenges that they have with the software. It's really good guidance for them. So it's been really, really fun the last 3 months seeing our developers much more interact much more directly with our customers.
That's great. And I think a kind of a side point from that, allowing your customers to cross-pollinate together will allow them to generate ideas that you'll be able to implement into the product, which is much more fast and efficient than you going from one customer to another. I mean, we have it on a quasi-regular basis where you have a customer, you set everything up for them, everything is the way they want it to be, the product is perfect, but they still want to speak to one of our customers who's done it because they just want to hear it, I suppose, the horse's mouth, so to speak. So that's, the Innovators Club is quite cool. I like that.
Yeah, and it is that they've really loved sharing best practice and talking about, because they're all facing similar challenges. If they're, let's say, the customer experience team in a large OEM, they're facing very similar topics, and so it's good for them. But it's actually been interesting because even cross verticals, they've learned from one another, and kind of, so it's been really interesting.
Good.
I'm just going to check for time. So, we're coming up to our 30 minutes. And shall we wrap up on some key takeaways and then take some answers, or questions rather, and answers maybe from the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if I was to have, and it's a pretty, to the point takeaway, and we've touched on it throughout, I would focus for any startup, and when I look at what Andrew did, and I look at, some of the different businesses that I've worked in over the years, I think it's key that you focus on critical pain points at the very beginning. I mean, there's all these questions around, does my product apply to a verticalization strategy? When should you think about verticalization? All of those different things. I think you should go, peel it right back to solving critical pain points and then move from there. I mean, when I look at our journey, and we touched on it a minute ago, so I don't want to repeat myself, but our journey has completely transformed, and you spoke about yours as well, and it's completely changed from where it began and what you were trying to solve in the beginning and who you're trying to solve it for, and you specialize from there. So if you have something that is an ultimate need and not something that gets pushed to the side when something like COVID happens, that's a really good place to start. And then you focus on setting yourself up for scale and success and growth from there. That would be my key takeaway from this.
Absolutely. Focus on that big, hairy problem, and then the rest kind of flows through.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is use data to back it up. Yeah. Make sure that you're not playing lip service to the data. Make sure that even when the data isn't telling you something you want to hear, that you're actually following it. I mean, it's something that, it's so easy even to ask a question to a customer in a way where you want the answer to be a certain thing. But that's the perfect way to create really shitty products. So instead, you've got to really, really be open. And I think the listening skills and the ability to challenge yourself through data and through lots of conversation with your clients will help guide you to that problem and to what is the path to making it, as you said, a bigger and bigger partnership and to get the scale you want. Yeah,
for sure. It's been a real good conversation. Has any questions come through? Do we have any visibility of the questions?
Fintan, do you have any questions that you want us to resolve from the audience?
Yes, we have one question about, do you have teams focus on each vertical, like the sales, the product, the customer success? And how much is it, how much of a challenge is it to share information between them? So do you have like expert teams, or is it horizontal or vertical teams?
So we've decided to do specialization. So we've created, specifically we had kind of enterprise clients in certain sectors, and then we had marketplaces, and marketplaces are very different animals from more traditional enterprise, because although they're large groups, they're very much digital first, and they have smaller and much more focused product teams and much more of a developer approach. And so, yes, we created two different units, marketplaces and enterprise. And within enterprise, we focused the salespeople and the CS on specific verticals. And we also have a focus for our pre-sales on a specific vertical. We do have a single product team because that's really important. We don't want to create precisely different platforms. And the core of the problem that we solve is the same. So the product team is a joint team, but they do tend to take over the expertise for one of the products. And same for product marketing. It's one single team, but there will be one person who's responsible for really owning that sector and sharing that information. Now, the information sharing is really, really important, because you don't want, again, the teams to just be so verticalized that they stop sharing. Because again, like Fintan was saying, the problem you're solving is the same, right? So you do have to create lots of cross-team work, and even the separate sales teams spend a lot of time together. And in fact, when we present to the company, the two units speak together rather than separately. And even just visually, that's really important. It reminds the whole organization that we are a single organization. Fintan, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, it's a yes and no. So different parts and different regions globally for us are at different levels of maturity. Here in APAC, it's fairly bootstrapped, so we're only a small team, so we'll get involved where we're needed. But it's the ultimate goal to have different teams specializing in different areas. Like, for instance, from the sales point of view, having someone who's specializing in the right for marketers solution and selling to media and advertising agencies. Yes, absolutely. It's the same for right for PS. That holds strong with the different sides of customers that we're dealing with and the different people and the teams that are dealing with these different size customers as well. And it's the same with the CS and the PS teams also. So I would say yes and no. I'd say that our US team is probably ahead of us, with EMEA very close beside them. We're a little bit more in the startup phase where we kind of get in and get our hands dirty where needed. But that's ultimately the goal and where we're going. And
that's a really good point. Your organization will evolve as you mature, even in a specific country. And so you need to adapt to the maturity of the organization, the maturity of the market, the size that you have of a team, and then just continue to build from there.
Exactly. And that's kind of what we've been doing, and we've been leveraging that land and expand piece and the different teams that are involved to bring business in, grow the business, and then the CSPS team assists along the way. So yeah, for sure.
Super. Fintan, were there any other questions that you wanted us to address?
For me, it's okay, but for the audience, so maybe if people have questions, so feel free to ask in the chat. If people want to reach out to you, so maybe this is an important information. Like, how could they reach out to you, Fintan and Anne, if people have questions later on?
Email. Feel free to email any questions you have. My email is Anne.De which is impossible to spell, so Fintan will share that. I'll put that in the chat at freespeed.com. My name is Belgian, and so it has a bunch of useless letters that have nothing to do with pronunciation. So,
and Fintan,
same from me. You're more than welcome to email me or catch me on LinkedIn. Lalor it's Lalor, but it's pronounced Lalor. Well, it's the other way around. So it's Lalor, so they have that. So I've almost done the same thing Anne's one there. But yeah, get me by email. You can catch me on LinkedIn, whatever suits. I don't mind. More than happy to continue the conversation.
Yeah, LinkedIn is perfectly fine too.
We have a new question. Do you need to use some HR hacks to help team focus on specific verticals, like super bonus, or is it the mission shared by all?
I think if you're forced to use HR practices to push a vertical, it's because people haven't bought into it. So I'm against that. Yes, you could do extra spits or something for a vertical, but you should have the entire organization believing in what you do. So that's wrong to me. If people really believe we must have software for a vertical, they're going to want to sell to that vertical, and the whole organization is going to want to get behind that vertical, and they're all going to want to become experts in that vertical. And you'll see it happen. If it's just HR and bonus based, then it's not the right approach. When you really start embracing a vertical, I'm in our office in Sweden right now, you'll hear about that vertical all the time. It reinforces itself because client conversations come in, that sparked conversations with product, that sparked some research, and that's what you want, right? Because again, vertical is not about just the sales team or the commercial team, it's the entire organization deciding that they're committing to that vertical.
Yeah, and on Anne's point there as well, I'm inclined to agree there. You know, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're still in the kind of horizontal SaaS area because we're suitable to anyone who wants to manage their work. The reason we've moved into these vertical focused solutions is because we've seen more success there. When I see the sales team and I see the CS team working with our customers, they actually enjoy more specializing in something and dealing with the same customers, and like, you know, for right for marketers, dealing with different agencies day in, day out, and dealing with some of the larger global agencies, because it's a more interesting conversation. You're seeing similar problems. You're solving a bigger problem instead of just being a generalist when stuff comes in and you're just trying to figure it out. Being more of a product expert allows you to sell better, allows you to get on with your customers better, allows you to solve more problems. So I think it's a much more satisfying motion to do.
100% agree. I mean, if you work in B2B, it's because you like solving problems for people, and you can only do that if you're a proper trusted advisor. And to be a trusted advisor, you need knowledge. And so you'll see your team satisfaction really go up, and you just feel it's much more interesting to talk to your clients about their 3-year strategy and how you can enhance it and how you can build it than just kind of, here's a purchase order, would you like to sign this? And so, I mean, purchase orders are nice too, don't get me wrong. So you'll just naturally see just satisfaction amongst the team grow as they become experts. Now, it could be a horizontal expertise, right? That works as well. But feeling, if you're in B2B SaaS, that you are an expert just makes you just much more motivated.
Thanks.
Agreed.
Hope you answered the question from Gerald. So we will be running out of time in a few seconds. I think people are looking forward for the lunch break, but the discussion was amazing. So thanks again, Fintan and Anne, for taking the time and for sharing your point of view, your feedback on verticalization. So thanks again. So people know how to reach out to you. So if you still have questions, but are too shy to ask in the, so yeah, thanks, Anne, for spelling correctly De Kerckhove. We'd appreciate. So yeah, thanks again for taking the time. It was a pleasure to have you on stage at B2B Rocks.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks. So it's time for the lunch break. We will be back at 2 p.m. For a talk about sales and customer success as a science with Julie from Winning by Design. So see you at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Thanks.